Hola, bienvenidos a esta presentación. This presentation will talk about C clauses with the present indicative and with the imperfect subjunctive. A C clause is an if statement. The word C without the accent mark means if, and don't forget that when it has the accent mark, it means yes. So first we'll talk about C clauses in the present indicative. If I call you, you help me. If I call you, you will help me. If I call you, help me. What all of these have in common is they start with the word if, a C clause, and they all have the present tense of call. This type of C clause, when it's used with the present tense, is considered possible. Is considered that it could be fulfilled. The consequence, the dependent clause, is then seen as possible. This consequence can be in the present tense, in the future, and it can be a command. This first example, we see it as the present tense. Si ustedes tienen tiempo, me ayudan. If you all have time, you help me. This is stating what you do if you have time. This implies that it's possible, probably that it happens often, and we can use the present tense here. Si ustedes tienen tiempo, me ayudarán says that if you all have time, you will help me. You can use the future tense, since this is seen as possible, to tell someone what will happen in this certain situation. The final possibility to use is a command. Command is also known as the imperative. And if I say, si ustedes tienen tiempo, ayúdenme, I'm saying, if you all have time, help me. In all of these cases, again, the consequence is seen as possible, and for that reason, we can tell someone what happens, we can tell someone what will happen, or we can tell someone to do something, since things are possible. Practiquemos. If you'd like to pause the video to try these, please do so. Notice that all of these have the imperative, the future, or the present indicative underlined. There's no way for you to know as a reader which one will be used. It all depends on what the speaker is trying to communicate. So to practice, I have to give you the situation. In the first one, si ellos hablan el español mejor, if they speak better Spanish, we want to tell someone to communicate with them. The imperative of comunicarse is comuníquense. Número 2. Si tú vas al baile con María, te divertirás. If you go to the dance with Maria, you will have fun. Since this is seen as possible, the consequence is in the future to tell someone what will happen. Here we have the C clause at the end of the sentence, but it doesn't change anything. José y Marta llegan a tiempo si se duchan por la noche. Here we're simply stating that they arrive on time if they shower at night. So we're going to use a present indicative of llegar. Si la profesora repasa el examen, sorry for that typo, that should be si la profesora repasa el examen, presta atención. We want the to command to tell someone to pay attention if the teacher is reviewing the exam. And finally, yo te daré el dinero si tú me lo preguntas. I will give you the money if you ask me for it. In this case, I want to tell you what will happen if you do something. The second C clause is with the imperfect subjunctive. And there's no choice in the back end of this. What needs to be used is the conditional tense. If I won the lottery, I would buy an island. This is considered not possible. And so, when this type of clause is contrary to fact in the present tense, the consequence is thus seen as impossible. We need the conditional to express what one would do if the situation were to happen. In this first example, we say, si yo pudiera correr más rápido, yo jugaría deportes profesionales. If I could run faster, I would play professional sports. In this first part, we use the imperfect subjunctive to express the if clause, what is contrary to fact. And we use a conditional to express what they would do in this situation. If this were actual reality, what would one do? So students often confuse when to use the imperfect subjunctive and the conditional, and they might mix these two up. So you want to remember that the way you spell see is with an SI, and imperfect subjunctive is IS. So you want to use the IS with the SI part of the sentence. The imperfect subjunctive is with the C clause, and the conditional is with what would happen. So in this example, if I ate less, I would lose weight. Si yo comiera menos, yo bajaría de peso. You're able to say this in the reverse order, and it makes perfect sense in both Spanish and English, but you do have to keep the right conjugation with the right parts of the sentence. Yo bajaría de peso si yo comiera menos. Notice that the imperfect subjunctive stays with the C clause, whether it's at the beginning of the sentence or at the end. Practiquemos. Please pause the video if you'd like to try these. In this case, you're going to determine whether you need the imperfect subjunctive or the conditional, depending on what part is missing. Si ellos hablaran el español mejor, se comunicarían con más personas. If they spoke better Spanish, they would communicate with more people. We're missing the C part, and since it's considered impossible, contrary to fact, we're going to use the imperfect subjunctive. Tú sacarías buenas notas si tuviera tiempo para estudiar. You would get good grades if you had time to study. Since you don't have time to study now, it's contrary to fact in the present tense. We need the conditional for what would happen. Same with this situation. José llegaría a tiempo si se duchara por la noche. He would arrive on time if he showered at night. Las chicas saldrían con los chicos. So here we're provided the conditional, which means we're missing the imperfect subjunctive. Fueran románticos. And finally, in this last example, we're missing both. Yo te daría dinero si tú lo necesitas.